everyone, from the Jam Yearbook. I'm Matt.
And I'm Jim. We're here to visit a different year of music each week and share our opinions on what we have found.
Welcome to version 2019.
Yeah.
Right off, we could fill the whole show talking about people we lost in 2019, not to belittle any of them, but we got a lot to talk about with the music. So, Jim, why don't you get us started?
I certainly will. Hey, we're the Monkees. Peter Tork, bassist and keyboardist for the Monkees, who you could argue were a One Direction kind of band in the 60s because they were created for a TV show. He'd passed away. He traveled to LA with his friend Stephen Stills, who recommended Tork for the show after being rejected himself, which is amazing because Stephen Stills was of Crosby, Stills, and Nash fame. So quite a bit of talent in that show. And yeah, Peter Tork was a funny guy and a good musician.
And in September, within a few days from each other, Rick Ocasek of the Cars and Eddie Money passed away. Both of these guys, they were really important to me growing up. I listened to a lot of their music. The Cars' Heartbeat City, that to me, that was their crowning achievement. It's still, I can listen to that thing constantly today. I can't get tired of that one. And I went through a huge Eddie Money phase in the 80s after his comeback home, I think in 86. And I got to see him open up for Cheap Trick. So that was a really good show up in the Montreal Forum.
I was a big fan of Eddie Money. I liked him in the 80s as well. And the Cars, they had a song on that Heartbeat City album, if I remember correctly, was one of the most iconic music videos of its time. You might think.
Yeah.
You might think that was crazy. And then Sledgehammer took over.
Oh, yeah.
But no, that's great. It's odd timing that I brought a Brad song to my 5 songs in version 1997 last week, and 1 week later we're here to eulogize Sean Smith. I don't know if he gets enough credit for writing some of the great material and meaningful songs that he did, but he was a great songwriter, and I recommend everybody go check out the band Brad.
Some people might recognize Leon Redbone's voice as Leon the Snowman that talks to Buddy in the Elf movie. He also sang the duet with Zooey Deschanel for Baby It's Cold Outside. His music, it's jazzy, ragtime Americana. It really set him apart when you heard it. I love his Double Time and Champagne Charlie albums. And Jared Anthony Higgins, better known as Juice WRLD, died on December 8th, 2019, 6 days after his 21st birthday.
So young.
Yeah, so young. He had been dealing with, his whole life with substance and mental health struggles. And listening to his song Legends, he's got a line in there, "What's the 27 club? We ain't making it past 21."
Oh.
So it was pretty prophetic for him. But despite having to weed through so many deaths, I'm in a much better mood this week. 2019, it was the perfect remedy to break away from my ranting of the last 3 versions.
I had stated in the 2009 episode that I'd definitely been paying way too much attention to the charts and that I really hadn't been out there exploring enough music.
Oh, same here. And did you expect 2019 to be such an amazing year with so many groups?
No, not at all. There's definitely been amazing waters to explore in 2019. So much so that I think this may be either an exceptional standalone year or the start of something to come over the next couple of years, like your big years that you have in music.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to figure out in future episodes. I don't remember version 2021 being this full of good content. So maybe that was just the down year, or there was, things lingering on from 2020, but we'll know when we get there.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when there's a shift in music because you have to have enough time to be able to look back at it retrospectively and see what it's influenced, if it's pushed another sound going forward. But I didn't have the same experience recording the 2021 episode. And of course, we brushed by the year before and after when we're looking up what was in the charts and what was going on. And I don't remember much in 2021, but I remember there was a lot of good stuff in 2020 that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to 2020 now. I remember there being, for version 2021, there was like these 90s alt rock bands that were still hanging on or coming out with newer material. I wanted to play catch up a little bit. Oh, what have these guys been up to? But 2119, it was all about exploring, and I was rewarded with some great new music. It rivaled that when I was coming, I think it was like 2008 when I was starting to come up with all these indie bands.
Yeah.
As far as like quantity.
No, it has been great. And, we just have to say, I think we've been worried about leaving someone out when we're doing the show, and that's why we turn to the charts first. Of course, we want the show to be successful. We want people to listen to it. So we're throwing these names out there like Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and Mariah Carey. But the funny thing is, We don't listen to any of that. And we didn't come here to this show really to talk about pop music, in my opinion, when we started it up.
No.
We didn't want anybody to feel left out. It's cool to cover the big events and remember the people who passed away. But the music we care about and that we've listened to growing up and what we're going to discover as we go through the years are also part of music history. And I'd rather inspire someone to go find the new artists and listen to them than to reminisce all day about what the Disney kids have done for the past 20 years. It's not like there isn't already enough about them out there. So let's explore. We'll find the new artists and shifting trends as we find them.
All right, all right. Get off your soapbox. I get your point.
No.
No, but I really cared about getting my rant out there. It's cathartic, but yeah, you're 100% right.
You ranted for 3 episodes.
I know, and thank you for your patience. I really appreciate that. But you're right. It is kind of about trying to hit on everything, and that was really like the elephant in the room. That I think if we didn't talk about it, some people would say, "Well, why didn't you talk about this?" At least I know some people were like, "Why didn't you just go in and rant on this?" Well, I did rant on it, but part of that's our fault. Maybe those years we shouldn't have chose so close together to cover, but you don't know that going in because it's kind of a blind taste test. But now we don't have to address it in those in between years as much.
No.
We can just say Disney kids and move on, or not even say it because people should know. But I do tend to worry about what people are going to want to hear from us. Are they going to listen if we go all in on bands they haven't heard of?
Well, Matt, I think the number one thing that people have said to me that they like hearing from us is when we don't actually agree on music and we aren't getting along and we're arguing back and forth about it. And this is where you do need to step in, because I do like some pop music. I don't like all of it, but I kind of try to recognize the stuff that's gonna be big at the start, and then I do get sick of it, kind of like everybody else does, but I have fun with pop music sometimes when it's brand new. So even going into this year, I'm probably going to contradict myself a bit, so bear with me, because I will talk about some artists from 2019, but only to generate conversation. So before you jump on that, about what we've recognized as the generational shift, because part of that generational shift will be what's driving new pop music as it goes forward. And this really hasn't happened the way it has since the end of the 2000s. So when you put the past, 50 or 60 years on shuffle, there are some definitive sounds to the decade. You can tell a 60s song from an 80s song. The 70s had its own AM radio sound. 90s grunge and radio-friendly rock that came along had its sound too. But as you noted in your epic 2009 rant, since 1999, it's been almost 20 years of the same shit on the radio. Only rap and hip hop seems to have continued to evolve. So when we used to recognize these sonic shifts every decade, it definitely, I think it stalled. I think we agree on that.
Yeah. Definitely.
But I've got a theory that it started to shift again in 2019. And I'm not sure if it's 2019, 2020, even 2018. We talk about brushing by years. I've got stuff there that I wanted to bring into the show and realized it was 2018. I think I've heard way more interesting sounds in this time period than any of our previous 2000s episodes.
Oh, definitely. Same here. How many bands did we text each other about this week?
A lot.
Probably more than any version that we've done so far.
Yeah.
As far as like new bands, it's like, oh, remember so. But now it's like, oh shit, check this out. And you hit on rap. Rap has had some good growth in recent years. There's still a lot of shit, but there's a lot of shitty rock bands and shitty pop music too. Just go back to the last 3 versions to hear about that. There is good rap and hip hop. A lot of it is pretty mellow, and some still has that really heavy reliance on 808s that can, kind of drive us nuts. But that's a youth or generational thing. It's not going to go away because you or I have a different preference. But sometimes if the song is strong enough or it's not so high in the mix, I can just tune it out and just find, whatever else it is in the song to enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't even know what would be seen as popular other than Post Malone. He seems to be widely accepted. At least, I see him in movies and commercials and whatever. But my kids, they've introduced me to Juice WRLD, as I mentioned up in the eulogies there. Denzel Curry, Tyler, the Creator, XXX Tentacion, which if we say that again, it'll only be referred to as X, because I don't know if it is dirty, but feel dirty saying that. I don't know why. I don't like everything. I don't like all of the songs. I do like a lot of Juice World stuff and Post Malone. Tyler, the Creator, he's interesting enough where I won't shut it off. It's kind of like jazz where you're like, okay, why do I like this? I got to try to figure it out. It's always interesting and I want to see where it goes. I will tune in when I hear it. But again, I believe I enjoy it more when my kids are playing it and I'm around and we're listening to it together, because then I can ask them questions
Yep.
about, oh, who's this? And they'll open up about, oh, they do this with this person, that with that person. And they actually go into why they like it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of good. And something that was unknown was Homeboy Sandman's Dusty album. I listened to that a couple times. I'm assuming it samples because hip hop is typically that, but it could be music specifically written for the songs. But it's really good. It's jazzy, it's funky, it's not 808 driven. His flow is a little hard for me to get behind, but the music keeps me into it and keeps me tuning in and kind of going along the ride.
You talk about all this rap music, and I guess this is where I struggle, because you talk about being around your kids and being exposed to it. When I did my Maroon 5 show, one of my guests on that show chose Lil Uzi Vert as one of his albums, and I had to listen to that.
Ooh,
And
that's rough.
yeah, well, as somebody who really was groomed on MC Hammer and Tupac and Dr. Dre, there's a big shift in hip hop and rap sound, and I talk about it evolving. And I know people think that it's gotten better, and there's a lot of respect out there for Kanye even, but I still liked the old Kanye from the 2000s, and everybody tells me all his stuff has gotten a lot better. So I need to learn how to shift with the times that way, or I can just, wear my asshole hat while you talk about it, and you can wear your asshole hat when I
Yeah.
talk about the pop music that I like, one way or the other.
And really, like I said, it's when I'm with my kids that I enjoy it the most,
Yeah.
because I see how they enjoy it. And they're reading the lyrics, they're actually like checking out the bio of the rapper and this and that, kind of like stuff I would do with groups. So yeah, I'm not typically putting on even Post Malone on my own. Occasionally, I'll turn on Circles or well, actually they got the Hollywood Bleeding album where the kids do, and it's good music.
For me in 2019, at least for the second half, that was when I started to devote more time to listening to women's music. After running through the 2000s, I can see why I was frustrated and started to shift gears. Obviously, I'd moved over here to Scotland in 2011, and that probably distracted me. But I was exposed to a whole bunch of other stuff I hadn't heard in the States, so that made a difference. But there wasn't anything that I was really clinging to. Some of the stuff in 2019 I found, though, Biba Doobie and her Bedroom Sessions EP, I'd really gotten into. Bishop Briggs, which is a name after a Scottish town near Glasgow. It's a female singer. She has a bit more anger and defiance in the style of the pop that she's creating. Her song Champion that year, it was a fight song for me. And outside of women's music, there was a band I discovered recently and their 2019 album, the Chris Barris Band. A few months back, I shared them with you. And if anybody out there needs to find your Bon Jovi replacement, well, here they are with a bit more rock edge to their sound.
Where are they from? Are they American? Are they UK?
I don't know. They're
You know?
playing in a small club here in Aberdeen in February. I'm going to go check
Yeah.
them out. Yeah.
Yeah, I get a lot of Kenny Wade Shepherd out of them. Their music is very blues rock oriented, but and also I kind of get a little bit of a country vibe occasionally.
It literally was one of those things on Instagram where it was like, this band is coming to play. And I clicked on it on Instagram and it played a 30-second snippet of the song. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go see this. It was good enough for me to go check out more of their music and stuff. Yeah.
But you're right. It fits that hole in your heart where, bands like Bon Jovi should be.
Yeah. Like they're doing it like they used to do.
I'm pretty sure we've talked about Biba Doobie together. I'm not sure if we've done it in the show. We've talked about her a few times. She sounds like a lot of the indie bands I was finding in 2008. So she was pretty easy to enjoy.
Yeah, but there were a lot of women-fronted indie rock bands making music. And that's what you shared with me this week. There were really some great ones. There seems to be a shift away from all of that music being maxed out, compressed to the top level of sound. And you're starting to hear that space between the drums, bass, and guitars again.
Yeah, there's still a little bit of that compression and redlining stuff. That was, a few bands I found pretty annoying. But yeah, the women bands that we were listening to and kind of talking about. Sheer Mag, La Butcherettes, and X Hex, they had their own things going on. You know, they didn't sound the same. Sheer Mag, there was kind of like a 70s classic rock and with a little bit of 80s, early 80s hair kind of or hard rock coming in.
Mm-hmm.
X Hex was really heavy into the 80s. La Butcherette, they were more modern sounding. I don't want to say, White Stripes, but it was definitely kind of more sparse sounding,
Okay.
but really great songs from those bands. And in going through 2019, I am really finding that what's old is new again. There's more older classic sounds kind of coming back and weaving into these.
Yeah, yeah. There's somebody who is actually very popular. He's won Mercury Awards and Brit Awards over here for music. It's Sam Fender. You brought him into the show for 2021. His album Hypersonic Missiles harkens back to the early Bruce Springsteen songwriting, in my opinion, but it has a sprinkle of the sound of the Killers, and it was definitely worth listening to a few times.
Yeah, that was a good song. I haven't dug too much into him because I'm kind of afraid of not finding a lot of material that I like. But after listening to that album, I'm kind of all in on him now. I like what he's got going on because I really, being an album person, I want several songs from the same person.
Yep.
And speaking of the Killers, did you listen to the guitarist from them, Dave Kooning? He had
Yeah,
a solo album out,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Prismism.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely going to have its, killer tendencies, but it's not overly attributing that band. But again, a lot of 80s influence in there, like what we were just talking about. So it is nice to have those throwback sounds, but with a new twist on them. And if anyone is missing like the 80s synth pop sound, you know what I'm talking about, Jim,
Yeah.
that we had growing up with. I didn't really care for it back then, but there's bands in 2019 doing it, like Two Door Cinema Club, the Chromatics, and especially Black Audio.
For some reason, it
It's
bothered us a lot on the 1986 episode, but we were
I
happy to be
know.
refreshed with it
I
again.
know, right? That's weird. Black is spelled Blaqk.
Okay.
If anybody wants to go check it out, but that's really, you'll listen to that and go, holy shit, am I in 83? but that's there. And more from the 80s in your 2000s, there's Whitesnake and Tesla. They both had albums out. Tesla's Shock was produced by Phil Collin from Def Leppard, and you can definitely hear that influence there in the overall sound and the songwriting. And Whitesnake's Flesh and Blood, that transported me back to 1984. It was very similar to that big album they had back then. Stray Cats have an album out, so there's some rockabilly if you want that.
Yep.
Even groups that I remember from the 90s, Perry Farrell, I know he was in late 80s, but Imperial Teen, Meat Puppets, Edwin Collins, they all had stuff out. I dug into Imperial Teen because our local alt station, they played a few songs from them, and I really liked their stuff. And I started reading up on them. I had no idea they were a side project of Roddy Bottom from Faith No More. And Edwin Collins, he was a great story to read up on. In 2005, he suffered 2 cerebral hemorrhages, which resulted in an aphasia, and it left him with weakness on his right side of his body. He had to learn to talk again, let alone sing, make music, record.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take a moment here and I'm going to have my little moment of ranting and talk about maybe a little bit of what I didn't like. I'm taking a risk here, but I really didn't care for the music that was coming from Louis Capaldi. Maybe on the first listen, I was okay. It was kind of cool. And then the radio kept the same song in rotation since 2019. If I'm at work today, I'm probably going to hear that song come on if somebody's playing top 40 hits or, kind of modern radio. I never need to hear them again. And honestly, what is up with these dude singers, songwriters who have to sound like they're crying when they sing? Just sing. Don't sound like you're crying and playing a guitar at the exact moment you just got dumped. It annoys the hell out of me.
Are we switching places here, Jim? Come on, man. You wrote a song called Crying. We won't. Yeah, let's not go too far. The only song I remember from him is Before You Go. I think you're being a little hard on him, but I don't have that fatigue with him because he doesn't get played over here hardly at all. So I probably heard him on the internet. But what we were talking about in the previous versions of things not going away on the radio and constantly staying around. So I can understand the fatigue you get, but he was he was 22 when he released the song, probably younger when he wrote it. I think we're so used to it, and we've talked about, especially with rappers, how everything just kind of sounds disconnected and cool and unbothered, that when somebody comes along and puts some emotion and really sings, it's a little unexpected. But yeah, not every song needs to be earth-shatteringly profound, where it sounds like we're reading your feelings journal.
Not to linger on it, but aside from Louis Capaldi, there was Tom Walker, also Scottish, and he came out the same year and had some of that cry singing going on. So I'm going to say that while my song Crying was by no means a masterpiece, I don't even remember what it goes like, to be honest with you, but a song with the same title didn't do anything wrong for Roy Orbison's career. So there you go.
Touche.
and I'll also say, if you sound like you're crying when you're singing, you also belong in the same category as Michael Bolton. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave that there for you. And
you got me. You got me with Michael Bolton.
but it was fatigue for me, and I understand.
Oh,
it
definitely.
was kind of a bit of a new trend, and emotion in song is important, and I understand that.
Yeah, we'll just have to agree to disagree with that, because again, fatigue plays a factor there. But yeah, a guy's starting to put a little dirt on his voice, and when it's a higher tone voice, yeah, it's going to come off as maybe a little bit more emotional, but would we be judging it differently if it's a woman than a man doing it? But adding that dirt, it adds a depth. But if they're doing it a lot or at the same point on the song, I could see maybe at the beginning of the song not having it then, but by the end you build it up and you have that crescendo, so you have that big release.
Mm-hmm.
You finally have closure to whatever you're singing about. I think that's probably a better way to do it than to just be robotic and say, oh, here's the part where I get dirty, here's the part where I get quiet. So that's what, if I was in the studio, because I'm so important, I would throw that tidbit out. But you're right. I tried to stay away from stuff I didn't like, but I did find stuff that I didn't like in the past that I revisited, and I finally was able to accept Vampire Weekend.
Yeah,
I had given their early albums so many tries, but there was just something there that I couldn't connect with, right? But this album, Father of the Bride, that did it for me. Same with Fruit Bats. I can't remember the name of the album, but the album they put out in 2019, I was finally able to, maybe I was in a good mood, from all the other music that it left that door in. But I really struggled with their earlier stuff. But I'm glad that maybe I can go back to their older stuff now and see if I can make that connection and get along with it. And I got to discover that Scott Ian has a band called The Damned Things that was really good. I didn't know he was in it until I just dug in on the wiki page. And The Last in Line, it's a band made up of some original members of Dio's band, the album he had, Last in Line. So that's where they get the name of that band.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were really good.
Yeah, nope, all good stuff. And it's been great. So Matt, here we go. We've done it. We managed to get through a lot of music that we enjoyed without having to name check a bunch of the same stars. It's been refreshing. I wore the asshole hat this week, and I had the rant. I talked about how I thought I'd seen a generational shift in music taking place around 2019, 2020. So I've asked a couple of young adults to come onto the show to discuss the observations I had and to see if there's finally a new perspective coming into play with regards to this industry machine just churning out the same shit for the past 20 years. We would like to welcome to the show Harry Batey and Mercedes McDonald. Hello to you both. And thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Guys.
There's a lot here to discuss. Is it okay if we just jump right into asking some questions about the music?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yep. Now, Harry, you're 20. Mercedes, you're 19.
Yeah.
Yep. So you both experienced 2019 as teens in high school, I would say.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I was
good stuff.
what, 16 would have been.
Yep.
17.
16 going on 17 to both of you in that time. I've been talking about this generational shift in music changing, and Matt and I have spent a lot of time in our earlier episodes talking about the Disney kids. You might recognize the names Britney, Christina, Justin, Ariana, Miley, etc. I've seen your generation reject this force-fed pop and venture out to find your own music and make a push for newer stars. like Billie Eilish or Harry Styles to rise. What is it about the music from the past 20 years that maybe has created this shift? Did these artists just get old, or did it all just start to sound the same? I guess first, Harry, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I've never been big into the charts. I've never been someone who follows it religiously or has to be listening to the top 10 all the time. But, you know, when you're 16, you can't avoid them. You're always on a bus or getting taxied around by parents. So you'll always hear what's on the radio. With old pop stars, I would say it just started to get a bit samey. It felt so disingenuous, like there was a big corporation behind them writing the songs for them, making sure that they're just vague enough for people to relate to them, and just catchy enough to cling on to the top 10 for just that extra week longer, and didn't really have the same sort of passion behind it as maybe someone who's not charting all the time.
Yeah.
It just seemed like I was being lied to almost. It was a bit disingenuous for me.
What about you, Mercedes?
I feel like our generation has access to more forms of media thanks to, our access to the internet. And it gives us the opportunity to research our own music and, find out what we like as individuals instead of being influenced by what's on the radio and being forced to listen to what's popular.
Yeah.
Wow, that those answers made me feel good. Because I remember when I was probably not your age, but a little bit younger, me and Jim, we had Casey Kasem's American Top 40, and I tuned into that every week. So you were almost getting programmed for those top 40 songs.
Yeah, when we had to find new music, they came onto the top 40 that week. Sometimes they would debut. Sometimes a song would come on where we were living. We hadn't heard it before, and it was debuting on the charts that week.
Yeah. And what's the internet?
Yeah. And and we and that was that, and there was that, or MTV. And MTV, we had specialty programs like Headbangers Ball. You could stay up late at night to try to watch. That would have the metal music that was going on, or Alternative Nation that would show the non-pop music, but there were also countdowns on that. And Matt brought up Casey Kasem, just so Harry and Mercedes, that name might not be familiar to you, but he was the voice of Shaggy in the old Scooby-Doo cartoons, if you ever saw those. But as the times have changed, how are you both sourcing your music now then?
Nowadays, I just open Spotify, and obviously Spotify follows an algorithm and it recommends you songs that are similar to ones that you've listened to previously. And yeah, from there on, I just kind of have a look at certain playlists that get recommended to me, listen through, and if there's something that I like, I add it to a playlist. If I don't like it, I just skip. And I really like having that freedom and that direct access. Like if I'm in the mood to find new music, it's easy.
What about you, Harry, in finding new music? How do you explore it?
Yeah, for me, a majority of my music comes from different forms of media. So like TVs, movies, and video games. And very rarely through like recommendations on friends or family or anything like that. I just feel like if I discover the music or songs or band through a form of media that I already enjoy, I'll be more likely to look for those bands in particular or remember those songs. And then when I listen to those songs, I'll be able to relate it back to other experiences and other feelings created from those forms of media, rather than just on a whim, say my brother recommended me a song and I can go, oh, okay, that was cool.
Has it always been like that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I've always been, playing video games or whatever, and only recently started watching and movies and TV shows that have really great soundtracks and iconic soundtracks, and going back and looking at old movies like Reservoir Dogs. I mean, when when that song comes on, everyone
stuck
thinks,
in the middle with you, man.
Stuck in the middle with you. Get the switchblade out, start
dancing around, and
and that's what happens. I think everyone who's seen Reservoir Dogs, when that song comes on, they can relate it to that, and that gives it a link and makes it more profound and more memorable. So yeah, I would say I'm mainly through media, and it's always been like that.
Cool. So Mercedes, how long would you say you've been using like Spotify for finding music?
Probably since I was 15, had a bank card and could actually pay for Spotify Premium. Definitely. It's
Oh,
been a long time now.
that's good. That's good. Sounds like both of you have a more independent view on trying to find music and what you like, as opposed to relying on peers.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, I would agree. I like to think that my music taste is quote unquote unique.
Yeah.
In terms of the people that I surround myself with don't have the same music taste that I do. And I
Yep.
take pride in that, essentially.
Yeah, but do you get the chance to, both of you could answer this, do you get the chance to turn your friends on to groups that you find?
I do try, but not everyone likes old man guitar music like I do.
Oh, come on, just put on Journey's greatest hits. They'll fall in love with it.
No, they won't. They won't. I know they won't. We'll talk about this in another show. Here's a question I have. Is it more common then for you to create playlists for yourself to listen to versus listening to an entire album? Because also when Matt and I were growing up, we didn't get a chance to preview everything we wanted to listen to. We would read in a magazine, hey, this album's great, so-and-so says so, and we'd have to go buy that album and bring it home and plop it in and listen to the whole thing for the first time and either love it and embrace it because we bought it, or it never got listened to again because it sucked.
Because all we had was the radio, right?
That's it.
You're not going to hear everything on the radio. Sometimes there's a lot of judging a book by the cover.
Yeah. What about for the two of you? How have you done that? Is it albums or is it more listening through your playlists?
I definitely just create my own playlists. I just have one main playlist that if a song comes on that I like, I just add it to the playlist and I'll have that on shuffle all the time. And if at some point I feel like a song's getting a bit old or I'm tired, I've heard it too much, I can just remove it from the playlist and move on. You know, Spotify, like Mercedes said, is really good at showing you new music. So you're never wanting for anything. You're almost always, you're being fed more and more. So if you want to add that to whatever playlist you want, you can go for it. And if not, just skip until you find a song that you do.
Mm-hmm.
I essentially do both. Usually when I first find a new artist or band that I've not heard before, I attempt to listen to their entire discography just so I can see exactly what to expect from them. And then from there on, once I've gotten used to them, I can then feed their music into certain playlists because I like to make playlists, for moods. And I usually see if a band fits certain ones and just kind of take it from there.
I like that.
Like
so
that.
yeah,
we used to have to make mixtapes.
Yeah, mixtapes
of that. Jeez.
Or the mix you take to the gym, or something like that.
Oh, I like
the mix
this
you give to your girl. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Oh yeah. Now it's like a share my playlist.
From your generation, do you create a playlist for somebody else to listen to on Spotify or anything like that? Or is it just more personal with music and that doesn't really get shared that way anymore?
I've definitely done that before.
That's awesome. That's what I wanted to hear.
See, I wish that I could make actual cassette mixtapes, but I've not bought materials to do so yet.
We used to actually cut things out of magazines and letters and everything and make the mixtape have its whole cover. Yeah. It wasn't just the music. There was a lot of work and emotion that went into making a mixtape for somebody.
Yep. So say you're in your car, right? And you got a playlist playing for your friends. Would a song come on where you'd go, oh shit, I don't want you to hear that? Do you have anything that you might be a little not embarrassed about, but they won't like or be judgmental about?
Definitely songs that they won't like for me. But it's not really a big deal. I mean, it's music. If you don't like it and you don't listen to it, it's pretty simple. So, but yeah, I definitely get that where a certain song will come on and I'll be like, maybe this isn't the right setting for this song. Let's just skip to something a bit, more lighthearted or something.
Yeah.
I get that way with Weezer in particular. Just
really?
Because no one around me seems to like it when I put Weezer on. Everyone's like, turn it off. It's It's terrible. I'm like, no.
A lot
Why?
of us
'Cause
90s
it's
guys would love it.
Yeah, exactly. Why? Because it's like a deep track, something they don't know, or they just generally kind of reject Weezer.
I think Weezer have a reputation on the internet for being jokey and not serious and just this terrible old man guitar band. And just I
Yeah.
think that the people around me don't give them a chance.
Mhm.
They don't actually realize that there is some songs that are, really good and worth a listen. And Weezer do have songs like Pork and Beans that are just funny and
Yeah.
a laughy
Yeah.
song.
Let's talk a little bit about pop music then before we get to our five. Is pop still staying relevant to your generation? The Machine, what's coming out? How are you finding these top 10 countdowns that go on BBC One Radio, which is the American equivalent of the Billboard Top 10? What's your reaction to that, or is it anything you even pay attention to anymore?
Like I said, I'm never really listening intently to the radio, but whenever I hear these popular pop songs, in the top 10, top 50, whatever, they all sound very similar. And in the way of, the style of music, the tempo, just everything about those popular songs sounds like they're being made by this big organization and then kind of dished out to these artists. And there's no individuality in these big pop groups.
Your generation's also started exploring the older music from the 70s, 80s, and 90s more than the previous one. Is it because streaming was made easier for in your life, or do you think your generation was genuinely looking back to this old stuff? Do you think the generation that's going to come behind you will continue the trend you have started, with this old is new approach?
I like older songs for how they sound on vinyl. I have a small vinyl collection, a nice vinyl player, and I can appreciate how the recording from older songs sounds on them. I do have some pop vinyls, and they don't sound the same on vinyl, which is an interesting observation to make. And I just like how older songs sound on vinyl for the authenticity of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that all pop music does sound the same. You can also argue that all quote unquote indie music sounds the same, but again, that's just personal preference. There's people that will like how pop music sounds all the same, and there's people like me that like how all indie music sounds the same.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just an interesting observation, but indie bands, quote unquote indie bands like Arctic Monkeys and Catfish and the Bottlemen, all their albums sound the same. But I can also argue that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and Radiohead, they do it slightly differently as to where the latter two bands, all their albums compared to each other sound completely different. There is a different quote unquote genre of music, as in how it's written,
Mm-hmm.
what they speak about, what instruments they use, how they use, and how they piece it together, which I think is what we need in modern music, although Radiohead's not really modern music anymore.
No, and it's almost like you have to start putting albums or even songs in genres and not the artist, because you take like you said, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, you're going to get a thrash album, you're going to get an indie sounding album, you're going to get a bluesy rock album, you're going to get whatever they feel like doing.
Yeah that's right.
And it is funny to hear you think of Radiohead as indie.
I know that my generation used the term indie completely wrong. They use indie to describe music that isn't popular, as in music that isn't on the radio, when I know that indie music is technically music that's been produced, by the band themselves and not from a label that they're signed to.
Yeah, see, we used to call what your peers are calling indie, we used to call that alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but my generation call alternative music.
Weezer.
Weezer,
Weezer,
Weezer, Papa Roach, 311.
So Matt brought up earlier in the show that there's the old is new again, and the old music has started to make a comeback. You talked about discovering it in media and film, and Mercedes, you explore it in what you found in playlists and such going back. Do you think that this is true, that old music is on the rise, or there's something there that your generation is finding?
I mean, you can't talk about old music coming back and not mention Stranger Things. That show has had this bizarre ability to put songs in
Mhm.
the charts that have no business being there as late as it is. Like you can guarantee a song that is used in Stranger Things is going to end up in the charts. It happened with Should I Stay or Should I Go? It happened with Master of Puppets, and it happened with Running Up That Hill. I mean, it was just insane how long it stayed in the top 10, number one, everything. So there's definitely that element to it. But people who are consuming that on the show are then actively going to find that music on Spotify. So there's obviously a need for it, a want for it. And I think certain things like Stranger Things are acting as a catalyst that are maybe piquing people's interests into saying, oh, maybe I'll go and try and listen to a little bit more Metallica when I've never really listened to anything like that before. And, you know, that sort of sound from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Despite me not having interest in the radio, in 2019, Post Malone's third album was on repeat for me. So many of the songs I could just listen to so easily. And I think that's why Post Malone is maybe as successful as he is he's by no means a lyrical genius with really deep songs that you can, you know, dig into and find the hidden meanings. He just makes for easy listening. And I think that's why he's become so popular, because everyone can like him.
Yep.
And, you know, the two songs in particular that were in the charts and they were massive were his song Circles and Sunflower. Now, Sunflower featured on the soundtrack to the animated Spider-Man film. And that in itself was a massive movie. And so I think it just lended itself to pushing him even further into the, you know, pop sphere and getting more people to listen to him.
Okay, in wrapping up, I think we've all kind of hit this middle ground that current pop music sucks.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel slightly vindicated with my ranting over the next 3 weeks, but it doesn't mean I haven't purged it from my system. I'm allowing myself to move on. So we're going to tie this up and we are going to go into our 5 songs. Jim, who chose 2019? I forget now. I chose 2019.
Yeah, you chose 2019.
So I'm going to get to go first. I'll start us off with the Meat Puppets, and the song is Warranty. I know this is kind of a holdover from the 90s. They were on my radar for a hot minute, but I didn't realize they were still putting out stuff. And I'm really happy I checked this album out.
Didn't the Meat Puppets perform with Nirvana on their MTV Unplugged
Yes, they did.
performance? Yeah.
Yep. And
that's how far back
I
they
really
go.
liked the album, but I almost didn't put the song on because it's really laid back. The whole album is almost, I don't want to say country, but it does have some country vibes in it. But then I just kept coming back to the song, and I'm like, well, if I keep coming back to the song, that means that it should probably be in my 5. And the reason I kept coming back is because of that laid back. You have the Kirkwood brothers singing together, and there's something with family members harmonizing together that can just be so beautiful. But yeah, I hope people go and check it out. It's a pretty easily digested song, but it's a catchy little tune.
Good stuff. Good stuff. My number 1.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, I had my other show I've talked about a few times, Maroon 5, where people came on with an album. And I had a guest that brought a ska album. He brought several ska albums to the show, but he brought the 2019 album by UB40 to the show, which kind of surprised me because I was like, wait a minute. You know, he's our age, you know, he's going to bring a 2019 album from UB40 to the show. But it was fantastic. It was great to listen to. And the first song for me is Gravy Train. It's nothing that's going to, you know, blow your mind with any kind of sonic sound that is anything you've never heard before. But it's just fun. And it's cool to hear UB40, you know, we're talking 40 years later, still making great music.
No kidding.
Yeah, this album, you actually told me about this album first, and I had to say, "Oh yeah, I know this album
Yeah,
from my other
yeah.
show." And then I actually sent the message to you, "Choo choo, the train is coming." Because this song, "Gravy Train," it's one of those songs that I just would want to be in a room full of 3-year-old preschoolers dancing around because they love trains, and we're talking about the train is coming. Well, there we go. My number one. It's up to you. Number two.
Number 2 is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Fishing for Fishies.
Well, there you go, Mercedes.
Little King Gizzard.
She referred to them as King Giz, I think.
King Giz. You know what? I should probably too, because that is a mouthful to say.
It's a very hefty, name the band has.
Yes, it is. And they had 2 albums out, and I didn't realize this album was out in 2019 until, probably like 5 days ago, because the first album I saw from them was in Infest the Rat's Nest, I think it was. And it was a thrash album. And I'm like, I'm really not in the mood for that right now. But there are some songs on it I liked, but then as I kept going on, I'm like, oh, wait a second, they have another album out, and this couldn't be more different from that, which is what I love about the band. They just go, and they're creative enough, and they're talented enough to just pull off whatever they want. This is more Fishing for Fishies. It's more blues and boogie. I'm quickly becoming a fan of theirs. They're becoming one of my favorite new groups that I've found. But Fishing for Fishies, it's light, it's airy, bouncy, and on the first few listens, you're like, whoa, where's this song going sonically? So they just keep me guessing. And another, just like Meat Puppets, I kept coming back to this song. So I'm like, okay, I keep coming back for multiple listens. It's got to be on the list.
Good stuff. Good stuff. My turn, number 2. Yes, I am going to go with The Allergies, and the song is Keep It Moving. I might actually have The Allergies on this playlist, 2018 or 2020 as well. Is a nice sweet spot for them. They're kind of old school. They're from Bristol, and they have that traditional rap music of authentic record scratching going on, but they bring out Andy Cooper. So a lot of their songs are featuring Andy Cooper, and he has that fast flow that is so good, and his voice is so good, and it fits that old school style that if you start listening to their albums or their singles and releases, they all sound the same, but they all sound great. You would go to one of these shows, and every single song you would be into the next thing he was because it's just so fast and good. So I would definitely pick The Allergies.
When you first put The Allergies on, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a band like the Snuts. I just thought that's what I was going to walk into. And then I'm like, oh, I had to switch gears quick because it was so unexpected. But you're right with his voice. He's got a really rich voice, and that I really liked. And I liked all the music going on in the background. That was really good.
Awesome.
So on to my number 3, we will go to Volbeat and Die to Live.
Mm-hmm.
I held on to this song since version 2021 because I remember researching for that year, and I found this band. I'm like, and I almost put this song on my list for that year, but I'm like, oh no, I'll have to wait. But this song was a no-brainer. It kind of starts out with this hard rock bluesy metal song. Then, when it comes time for the solo, you got the saxophone and this little Richard-esque pounding piano comes in. And I'm realizing all along it's been like this rockabilly, psychobilly metal, and it's relentless in a good way. Just the energy throughout the song is incredible. And I wanted the song to go on longer. Just, even so maybe Neil Fallon could get another verse.
It's so good. It's one of those songs that you've brought to the show that made me go explore more of it. And I'll have to say the song Pelvis on Fire, it has an honorable mention for the show because it's just fun, great music. So look at Volbeat. I really recommend it.
Yep. And you're not wrong about Pelvis on Fire. That could have easily have been my choice for this, because you can really hear some Elvis influence when he's singing. And that rockabilly. Yeah, it's great. I love that stuff.
Number 3 for me is Rival Sons, and the song is called Do Your Worst. I saw Rival Sons in, I would say, maybe 2012, and they just really reminded me of a authentic classic rock band, but with original music, and it hit right. They have a classic rock sound in modern times, and they're doing it right. And this is another case of, why don't they make music like they used to? Well, here's a band that's doing that. And yeah, I'm happy to put this song on the playlist.
Harry and Mercedes both hit on authenticity in music. It's nothing that you can kind of really explain. You just know it, and you hear it with Rival Sons. You said it's got that classic kind of hard sound, but it doesn't sound dated. It sounds like, they really mean what they're doing. It's not a put on.
All right, number 4. What do you got,
really
Matt?
Good. Black Pumas and Fire.
Nice.
All right. This is a great soul song. Everything sounds just like I want it to. The whole album is fucking fantastic. Just the echoey guitar. I love the simple guitar lick on it. The taste horns, and they sound just like I want horns to sound, right? They're not processed. They sound like horns. And there's so much space for everything to shine. In Eric Burton's voice, it's so smooth and soulful that you talk about putting emotion in your voice, but not sounding like you're crying. He does that to a T. It's so perfect.
Yeah, this is one of those albums that I prejudged before I listened to it for some reason.
What did you think it was going to be, rap?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was going to be rap. Black Puma, and I don't know why I thought it was going to be rap, but being from 2019 and not having this kind of music being, really kind of out there as much as it is. Yeah, it's straight up Marvin Gaye shit.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
And it sounds excellent.
It does. It sounds really good.
All right, so on to you and your number 4, Jim.
My number 4 is fucking awesome, and it's fucking awesome because the name "fuck" is in the name of the band. Tropical Fuck Storm, and the song is "Braindrops." This is a song that I would have listened to when I was 14 and nobody else was looking.
Yeah.
When everybody else was listening to pop music and I wanted to listen to our alternative music. Tropical Fuck Storm, Braindrops, there's something about it. I started listening to this song. You sent me the YouTube video of it.
Yeah.
And I was about 30 seconds into it and I was ready to shut it off.
Yeah. Same here.
But then I couldn't.
No, I know, right?
And I kept watching. And it's one of those songs that just sonically got better and better to me. Didn't shift much, didn't do a whole lot of changing, but it's almost like, oh, wait a minute, I get this. And it's amazing. And also the video looks like a college video class production.
Yeah.
But it fits the song.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And those girls come in, like, I don't know their names off the top of my head, but like the women in B-52s, where they would come in and kind of make their little exclamations. But this is nothing like B-52s. But you're right. 30 seconds in and I'm like, no way, this isn't. But then I couldn't stop and I kept coming back to it over and over.
Yeah. We argued over this song, who was going to take it over the show.
No.
So I think Matt let me have it so he could have 5.
Breath of fresh air. Yeah.
All right. What is your 5th song, Matt?
My 5th song is a rap song. We'll go with Dirty Heads and Supermoon. First, if you're going to sample Vehicle by the Ides of March, I'm all in. I love that horn section that they have. It's a great line. As soon as I heard it, I'm like, boom, that is going on the list. It's got just a great flow through the whole song. And when a song sounds effortless, but you can hear all the hard work and detail that goes into it, it's magic. And this song for me is just like, yeah, I can listen to this over and over.
Yeah, it's good. It's great. It's great. So my final.
Your final. You can close this out.
Well, I talked about Bishop Briggs earlier and having a fight song, and I even think I brought it up. It was Champion. It's the funny thing is, it became a fight song for me, and I loved it, and it's great. And I'm going to bring it to the show, but it also wound up in a bunch of television commercials over here for the Olympics. I think it was a big WWE song at one point.
God, really?
Like as far as a promotion song, her music was all over the place in Netflix movies off this album. But I went and saw her, and I was watching her perform in Glasgow. I think it was the last show I saw before everything went into lockdown in 2020. And at the start of the show, when you're trying to figure out where the band is and watch them, but then you're captivated by the singer on stage, about 4 songs in, I realized she was singing to backing tracks and there was no band. And her performance was so intense and so strong that it made it fantastic. Not to have a special mention here, but her song River was covered by Pink on Pink's last tour as she went through the UK. So there is something really cool and special about Bishop Briggs, and especially during this time in 2019 and what she was writing around this area, that it was just great for me, and I really liked it. Well, part of this show, bringing on Mercedes and Harry, was to invite them to have a song to add to the playlist. And we wouldn't give them 5, unfortunately, because I think Mercedes could probably give us 5 honorable mentions like Mark did last week.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be 5 Weezer songs, which I wouldn't mind too much.
It'd be like, yep, no problem. But Mercedes, we'll start with you. The song that you want to bring to the show this week, what's that going to be?
Yeah, the song that I want to add is Frail State of Mind by the 1975. And the reason why I wanted to add it is just because I feel like the song speaks extremely realistically to our modern conditions.
Yeah.
I see that.
I have liked 1975 a bit. I've seen them kind of from the cusp since I've lived here. And as they put new albums out and try to pay attention to what was going on, and their sounds changed a bit over the past 10 years that I've lived in the UK. And I went and listened to this song after you put it on the list and you told us about it. And I can understand why you also really love Radiohead. There's something about this song, in my opinion, that kind of touches on the Kid A kind of sound that was going on, where it's melodic, but it still has this really kind of profound message going on in it. And yeah, it's a good choice. So I think people should listen to it. Everybody.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, give it a shot.
Yep.
All right, Harry. So what do you got for us to add to the playlist?
I would like to add Slipknot's Unsainted to the playlist.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad you added this too.
We're gonna have Slipknot on the playlist now.
Yeah, it's just I was introduced to Slipknot years ago, and I just seem to find myself coming back to them and just enjoying their songs for what they are. Yeah,
that's great. That's all.
Yeah,
that's all you probably need to say. That's
if you've heard
awesome.
Slipknot, you can understand why you like them.
This is a little bit different for them, though. It's not, the grumbly kind of, as I've kind of, derailed them for being like Muppet metal with a the kind of
but then
it is a little different. I like this song.
It's similar to other big songs. There's like Psychosocial and Duality, where they have that kind of break where it's a bit more melodic and then goes back into the metal.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too, and what I liked about it is I've heard Corey Taylor sing on other songs where he's covered tunes, and really had a more, I would say, audience-friendly vocal going on than what he normally does in Slipknot. And this song, Harry, thank you for bringing it to the show, because it brought me into Slipknot.
Same here.
It made me, and I really, a lot of the bands and a lot of people that I've played with music in my life, the drumming of Slipknot is just, and on this song, it's always exceptional. And it doesn't miss anything. Is this the drummer that passed away recently that's playing?
No. Oh, actually, yes, it should be. I believe the drummer, Joey Jordanson, was the original drummer since the formation of the band. And I believe he died in 2021. But he left the band. I think, it's a bit controversial. I think he was kind of half kicked out, half left, because he had medical issues and he couldn't really walk properly and didn't have the energy to play at the level that they have to play at. So they brought in a new guy. Jay Weinberg is the new drummer for the band. But
That is Max Weinberg's son,
No
who is
shit.
the drummer from Bruce Springsteen and the E Street
Yes.
Band.
Really?
Yes.
Now,
Honestly, Harry, that's amazing. Mercedes, great song also to bring. Matt, your songs always suck like always. No, I'm just kidding.
hey, fuck you.
No, it was great this week to listen to these songs, and I really enjoyed having the both of you, Mercedes and Harry, on the show. It was great to bring your perspective on modern music, and I think this served as kind of great therapy to Matt and I because of covering those 20 years. We're going to have to go back in, just so you know. There are a lot of years in those years that we're going to have to try to dig in and be like, we're going to ignore all that stuff now.
Yeah, but it's nice to hear some commonality, and and there's always going to be differences, but it's nice to hear all that.
Yeah. So thank you very much, as I said once again, for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks,
said
guys.
Too many times now. And Mercedes, come back for the Christmas show. I think Harry will probably find a good time for you to come back as well, because your input has been phenomenal, and we appreciate that. Maybe you can come do the 2022 countdown with us.
I would love to do that.
You're both fantastic, so we'd be happy to have you back anytime.
Yeah,
that's great. So this is the Jam Yearbook. We want to thank everybody for listening and everybody who is voting on our Facebook group page. If you are discovering this show through our new TikTok page, which seems to be getting lots of hits, we would like to say, go to the Facebook and look up, go to the Facebook and look up. That's how old people say it.
Exactly.
Go to the Facebook.
Go to the Book of Face.
And look up the Jam Yearbook. You'll find a group page. Join us. The only question you have to answer is, are you cool? You can answer yes, no, or maybe, and it'll probably still get you in. And that won't matter. Because if you made it to this point in the show and heard that, we'll be happy to have you on.
Yeah, we're still that desperate.
We are. But thank you, everybody, for listening once again. And always fantastic, Matt, to do the show with you. And we will look forward to the next show, which will be what year?
It's your turn to choose. It's your turn to choose.
It will be 1988.
Thank God. Thank Jesus.
We're going to get out of the 2000s. You are going to break out your mullet, and I'm going to break out my parachute pants.
Yes. Don't fly away.
We are going to have a hair metal MC Hammer dance-off.
I just got to deal with a concussion afterwards.
Yeah, from flashing your head around. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Matt, say goodnight.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Mercedes and Harry, say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Awesome. Peace, love, and podcast.